But for now, immigration, of course, a hot topic pretty much every day, but also today because our new Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, has been speaking out in the comments.
Home Secretary.
Yeah, Home Secretary, yeah. Why did it say Foreign Secretary? Anyway, let's take a listen, shall we, to what he had to say.
We want to make sure that we are choosing the right people in the right numbers at the right pace. The Rwanda scheme is an incredibly important part of the basket of responses that we have. I will do everything to ensure that we drive down small boat arrivals.
I was trying to count up how many Home Secretaries we've had. In the last year, I think, James Cleverly is the 5th by my calculations. I mean, it's always possible that I've added one or missed one because, I mean, so much has been going on. But when I sit there, also Suella as well, you might have seen at the weekend, her so-called 4-point plan leaked. I'll just remind you guys of that in case you were doing other things this weekend. She had her 4-point plan. Do you remember in this resignation letter, she was saying that she had all the plans and written all these letters that were ignored. Anyway, she wants to increase the thresholds of foreign workers to £40,000. She wants to close down extended visas for graduates. That was her point 2. Her point 3 was restricting the number of family members migrants can bring to the UK as well. And her 4th point was prioritising Russell Group University applications in visa applications. So there you go. We've got a new Home Secretary. We've got one that's not going away anytime soon, a former one there releasing plans, or someone close to her releasing those plans. Are we any closer to fixing the situation with immigration in this country?
No. I have to say, I always say this, but I'm slightly conflicted on this because I have a daughter-in-law who is a first-generation immigrant, and we battled like hard to get her in, and we're very glad that she is in England now. So I'm a bit conflicted on this. But there is a big political problem. This is not just about elected politicians either. This is for the political system of Britain, and actually for this political system of Western Europe, that there is a problem where public discontent is strong, but the legal constraints are great. And there is a bit of a mismatch at the moment between those two. The public are getting fed up with this, and the lawyers and the House of Lords and the Home Office officials are all saying, no, you can't do anything about it. And something's going to have to give. I don't know what it is, but something is going to have to give, because the nature of a democracy in the end is that public opinion will be respected, and it's not being respected at the moment.
Yeah, but you say about public opinion being respected, it's certainly not been respected. Not only is it not being respected, it's being absolutely vilified, because if you have the audacity to actually say, you know what, I don't want this uncontrolled immigration, it'll be like about half a second before you're deemed as racist by people.
Well, I think it's, if you look at those figures that came out last week or the week before on net migration, most of those people are people who have come here either to work or as students. Now, personally, I'd be very happy to forget Suella Braverman. I think she's a dreadful woman. Rishi Sunak was an idiot to make her Home Secretary, and he's paying the price for it. I think James Cleverly...
Why are you so personal in your attacks of people that you disagree with politically? Why can't you just say Suella Braverman was someone I disagree with? Why
because she was so... Because her language was so incendiary.
In your view? A lot of people
in my view, yeah, well, of
that.
course, but I'm here for, I'm here to give my views. That's what I'm here for, not as an expert. I'm here with my views as a political commentator. And I think her language and the way she conducted herself, and the way she's conducted herself since being sacked, is quite appalling. I think James Cleverly is calmer, he's more grown up, he seems to be able to have a conversation without it turning into hatred. And the point that you make, Michelle, is right. If people say, oh, I don't want immigration, and then other people say, oh, you're being racist, we have to be able to have a proper conversation. And that conversation means, if you're talking about raising the salary level for people coming here to work to £40,000, that is not going to deal with social care and health workers, which we desperately need. So who's going to fill that gap if those people are not going to come in on a salary cap at the moment, which is £26,000? Because that's not what a social care worker or health worker is going to get paid in this country.
Well, the Tories are trying to get people to have to take work placements, to have to go back into the world of work when perhaps they've been slightly more reluctant to do so?
Well, you could argue that, you know, once the Brexit vote came through, somebody might have thought in government, oh, we might need to train up some people to do the jobs that people from other countries have been doing. And perhaps, you know, by now, several years on, we could have had people being qualified. You can't say, oh, if, you know, you're lazy, you're not going to go to work, but you've now got to take a job as a care worker in an old people's home. That's not the answer.
And, you know, I do find this whole notion of, you know, like in Ireland, everyone's very familiar with that situation, the horrendous attack that happened just a few days ago now over in Ireland. It took all of, again, minutes when people were taking to the streets to protest against some of the goings on there. It was almost instantaneous that those people were labelled as far right this and far right that and far right this and far right that. And all that does is inflame people and make people actually more extreme in their views because they're fed up of being vilified, undermined, attacked, name-called, etc.
Well, for people to be inflamed, they have to be flammable. And this is what the political elites have to grasp, is that things are getting a bit hairy. Now, sometimes those sort of misreporting can apply there and, you know, the social media don't help and those things are reprehensible. But there has to be some acknowledgement, I think, mainly from the judiciary and officialdom, that there is a problem here and they have to be a little bit less inflexible. I thought the Supreme Court's ruling the other day was unwise for the judiciary in the long run.
What, are you on about the Rwanda one?
Yeah. Unwise for the judiciary in the long run because, you know, I just think there may come a point at which people get so fed up with these court rulings. OK, they're possibly going to vote the Tories out and get Labour in. Well, that's not going to help much. But I think there may come a point at which the people are going to lose patience with our system of law. And I do not want to see that. And I think you need to have the good people putting this right rather than the bad people.
But Quentin, you know, the Supreme Court made it absolutely clear that the proposals went against the laws that are existing in this country. It wasn't just about the European Convention.
They did, but they also said that the basis for that was that we believe the United Nations, their view of Rwanda. The United Nations sends refugees to Rwanda itself.
But if you could argue that actually it was a misstep by a not very well briefed or a very politically motivated Home Secretary to get it to that stage without getting those ducks in a row first.
But you could also argue, I think, that the Supreme Court judges were determined to reach that view and that they're being very credulous in the way that they treated the evidence from the United Nations.
Well, I would disagree with that, and I think we desperately need... You know, we've seen Suella Braverman, when she was Home Secretary, trying to meddle in policing matters with regard to marches and protests through London. You do not want government, politicians meddling in the judiciary.
But you see, I think, with you, Joe, sometimes your dislike of the individuals concerned almost like colours your outlooks, because is there anything Suella Braverman could have done that would have been right? Is there anything?
You asked me this last time and I still haven't come up with an answer.
I haven't slept on it now since.
No, I can't. Well, yes, she's gone. That's good. Now she needs to shut up and go away.
Why?
I think, you know, it goes back to the point you just made talking about the Irish
Do you think Tony Blair should shut up and go away? He pipes up every 5 seconds about everything.
Well, I don't think anybody particularly pays much attention to him. I think sometimes he looks a bit desperate to try and be heard. He's a bit like me. But it's the language that Suella Braverman used in a position of responsibility and authority that I think helps or helped inflame, as you rightly say, those tensions and that flammability on topics and subjects that people feel very strongly about. And I think it is beholden on people in public office to actually behave with a little bit of decorum and calmness sometimes, rather than whip things up.
I know, but then at the same time, when people are sick to the back teeth of non-activity, of things progressing in a way that's against a lot of the wishes of the electorate, then frustrations.
Well, of course they do. Of course they do. But, you know, there is probably quite a lot of people watching who'd like to bring back capital punishment. There are probably quite a lot of people watching who would like women to not go to work and stay at home and, you know, just have children and do the housework. There are lots of things that get people frustrated. I actually don't believe that immigration is the number one priority of most people in this country.
I bet it is for a lot of people.
I think money is probably.
I think the
money
cost of living,
and hospitals,
and then the NHS, and then immigration. It's certainly up there in the top, and I think it will probably depend on where you live and how you're affected and what impact it might have on where you live. But I think the number one concern to most people is the cost of living.
If we can go back to the relationship between the Prime Minister and Suella, because you were talking at the start there about the plans that Suella Braverman had. Actually, some of those plans, I think, will be accepted by the government in the end. But I think, actually, in the end, the reason they had that bust-up, I think it was, as in most things in politics, I think it was personal. I think they had a real blazing row. And I think that Mr Sunak felt that Mrs Braverman was not very loyal, not a team player. And I think they just had a real old-fashioned Barney, and he said, right, I've had enough of you.
But, Quentin, you were in the Commons this afternoon and you saw James Cleverly.
Yeah.
What did you feel?
Well, Mr Cleverly, you don't get a tremendous idea that he's going to achieve anything, but he's going to do it in a very calming way. And he has a more felicitous turn of phrase than Suella had, which is a way of saying more diplomatic. Maybe it's another way of saying he doesn't reflect voters' anger enough. But he's a very hard man in the chamber. I'm talking about his performances here. In the chamber, he's very hard to dislike. And I think that may have a bit of electoral merit to it.
Is that what you want at home? So you're sitting there, you know what, I don't know, you'll have this army barracks, former army barracks in your neighbourhood, you'll have thousands of people in your army barracks, but hey, you know what, as long as you like your Home Secretary, that's what will be influencing your vote at the next election. And how important is immigration to you in your top priorities? Is it number one or not? And if not, what is your number one? Coming up after